crime so evil and sinister, it would shatter her community.
They deserve to die a long, slow, horrific, painful death.
In 2010, 6 years after the online role-playing game World of Warcraft initially took over the minds of the youth around the world, Kimberly Proctor's life came to a tragic end. Take a trip down the grisly trail of lust, terror, and tragedy as we dive into exactly what happened to 18-year-old Kimberly and how her killers used the platform in an attempt to get away with murder. Kimberly Proctor was born on January 1st, 1992, to her middle-class parents, Lucy and Fred, in a small Canadian town just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, called Langford. They like to call her the New Year baby due to her birthday being on New Year's Day. She was a beautiful, caring, wholesome, yet quiet girl, searching for love in a world that had been extremely cruel to her. Kim was bullied by all of her classmates throughout school and suffered from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, better known as ADHD. Her only comforts in life were her love for animals and chatting with strangers online as she navigated a life of isolation and medication, often leaving her feeling completely numb. She would often wear her favorite cat ears headband to school and meow in class at other kids, instead of focusing on her lessons. In high school, after experiencing one too many problems with learning and interacting with other students, she was transferred to an alternative school called Pacific Secondary. Alternative schools are environments with highly engaged teachers who focus on smaller groups of students. They use non-traditional, hands-on approaches to learning. In Canada, these schools may be focused on democratic education, holistic learning, physical art, mindful living, entrepreneurship, social justice, community outreach, and more. She was embraced by a group of misfits she thought would finally become people she could confide in. Shortly after making friends with this oddball group, Kim began dating a boy named Zach. However, their romance was short-lived, as most high school romances are, and another boy from their friend group named Cruz Wellwood began flirting with Kim over instant messaging. Cruz was also often bullied by kids at school. They called him Spaz, which Kim thought was a nickname, but Cruz felt it was an insult. He had self-proclaimed people issues, but claimed he finally understood how people work and what makes them tick. So it was easy enough to put on a mask and play pretend. He also described himself as violent and explosive. Teachers described him as potentially gifted, but rude towards his peers and anti-female. He once cracked a classmate's head open with a chain and broke another one's nose. Kim was mesmerized by the attention Cruz showed her, as she rarely felt noticed by anyone. She felt like maybe he could take her mind off of Zach and help her move on from their relationship. But that situation was also short-lived. They chatted over instant messenger almost every day, up to a month or two before her death. She often confessed to him her insecurities and events that would happen at school, including a situation where boys from their friend group shouted mean things about her after the breakup. Cruz mentioned to her how he felt like he couldn't lie to her. It made him feel too guilty, and he didn't mind that she was not a very happy person anymore. That doesn't really bother me. Another person's negativity and pessimism won't affect me. But shortly before her death, Kim found out she was on track to graduate that year and had plans to volunteer at a wildlife center the following summer. Two events she was very excited about. This clearly showed that although she was sad about her insecurities and the way other classmates treated her, she was in no way wanting to end her life or harm herself. Kim and Cruz had another friend in their group named Cameron Mofat. Cam struggled academically, passing only 5 classes in the 4 years he attended high school. It was mentioned that he may have been sexually assaulted at the age of 3. He was known to harm his younger sister, dog, and peers often. He was actually expelled from Pacific Secondary for bringing a box cutter to school and suffered from ADHD but refused to take his prescribed medication. Although this was a factor mentioned in the documents released by the police department, not all people with this type of medical condition are a threat to others. If someone feels like their brain chemicals are unbalanced, they should speak with a professional. Cruz and Cam had been friends for years before they met Kim. They met in 5th grade and bonded over World of Warcraft, while often discussing the disturbing thoughts they both had about harming others. They even experimented with drinking blood and other bodily fluids together. The two teenagers were often found sneaking out to do some drugs and getting into trouble together. Cruz had many dark secrets in his past, the biggest being that his father was a convict who ended the life of a 16-year-old girl in an unspeakable way in 2001. He rarely saw his father and went to live with his grandparents for a good portion of his early teenage years. But when he moved back in with his mother, he often got physical with her, even hitting her on 2 occasions. Cruz shared many disturbing thoughts online in his blog, including an entry titled "Early Warning Signs of a Serial Killer." He mentioned the characteristics of one and stated, "The peculiar thing is I meet all 14 criteria. Apparently, though, meeting all criteria makes it unlikely for the subject to be a serial killer. I suppose only time will tell." This eerie blog entry would foreshadow a crime so evil and sinister, it would shatter his community. The 3 friends often chatted over Instant Messenger about the ongoing torment Kim experienced from other kids at school. On the day before her death, she had a disturbing exchange with both Cam and Cruz, including one that referenced how explicit their conversations would get, including the comment from Cam referring to when Kim's pet rabbit died in her arms. Kim to Cruz. "Cam invited me to a party in his pants and promised me a cream-filled lollipop. He says he has a lollipop that will last all night long. I didn't know they made those." Cruz to Kim. "I happen to own that brand of lollipop as well." Kim to Cruz. "Okay." Kim to Cam. "There is no such lollipop with a cream in the middle." Cam to Kim. "You have death urine on you. You're going to die next." It's clear that she was a naive girl who, although felt that she wanted to explore her sexuality, really didn't understand what they were talking about. After this conversation, Cruz invited Kim to chat on the phone and secretly included Cam in the phone call. As they talked about making plans for the next day, Cruz and Cam instant messaged each other about the terrible acts they would perform on Kim. While Cruz was planning the attack, Cam made sure he would not go through with the crime without him and constantly felt angry when Cruz would withhold details. The following morning, Kim's class was going on a field trip that she did not attend. Instead, she had the day off from school and planned to babysit at 3 p.m. When her mother left for work, she had no idea it would be the last moment she ever saw her daughter alive. How heartbreaking. Shortly after, Kim left her home and caught the bus to the Langford Exchange to meet up with Cruz and Cam. The 3 of them walked to Cruz's house on Happy Valley Road, where she would ultimately meet her demise. In the early hours of that day, Cam and Cruz discussed their plans over Instant Messenger, with Cruz stating that they would use a code phrase for when they were ready to harm Kim. "I think I'm going to make some KD." KD being a short form for what Canadians called Kraft Macaroni and Cheese or Kraft Dinner. Not long after arriving at Cruz's house, the plan began with them kicking Kim in the ribs and then tying up her legs and arms behind her back. They performed terrible acts on her before she passed of from the teens shoving one of Cruz's socks in her mouth. They went on to demoralize her body after death and ultimately put her in a large freezer in Cruz's garage. We can't possibly imagine what she went through that day. She had ended her relationship with Cruz months before this encounter, only to have him text her out of the blue the day before. If only she had picked up on his homicidal tendencies and realized hanging out alone with them was a terrible idea. During the attack, Cruz signed into his instant messenger in an attempt to create an alibi by messaging Kim to see if she was done babysitting yet. While this was happening, his other friend IM'd him for advice on what he should do about his dad's drinking problem. When the friend became upset, Cruz did not respond immediately. He reached out again, typing, "Dude, speak." 8 minutes later, Cruz responded to his friend with the comment, "Sorry, the freezer was jumping around." This is probably the worst comment he could have made, as it proved he was dealing with something in the freezer that day. And police reports would later show that Kim was inside of that freezer. Cam then tried to contact his ex-girlfriend and convince her to join them at the Cruz's home. Fortunately for that young girl, she did not meet up with them, as she could have been their second victim that day. It seems pretty obvious that the teenagers felt a sense of empowerment over women and might have become serial killers that night if they were given the chance. The following morning, Cruz and Cam put Kim's body into a large duffel bag and rode the bus to the Galloping Goose Trail, where they burned the bag under a bridge. While they were there, Cruz took out his cell phone and sent a text that would later prove he was there that day. At the same time, Kim's mother reported her missing when she tried to call her that morning and was sent straight to her voicemail. Her mother told the police, "Because the phone was turned off, I knew something was wrong." While friends, family, and police searched for Kim, Cam and Cruz went on with their daily activities, which included Cruz hanging out with a girl he had recently been seeing, and Cam going to brunch with his mother and grandmother, and then going to buy a new video game at the mall. Luckily, neither Cruz nor Cam's new girlfriends were harmed before the killing of Kim. That same evening at 7 p.m., a man was hanging out with his friends on the Galloping Goose Trail when he stumbled upon the burned remains of an unknown body in a charred duffel bag. Dental records confirmed that it was in fact Kimberly Proctor. Over 40 officers were sent out to investigate the scene. Another major factor in investigating Kim's death was the online world. Officers understood how valuable the use of Facebook and other chat forums could be in finding the killers. They set up a memorial page and surveyed the commenters' profiles. Meanwhile, Cruz was becoming aware of the hunt for him and Cam and began to feel worried that the police were closing in on them, even though he had previously stated that he believed they had gotten away with it. Cruz even attended Kim's memorial and was seen skipping back to his car after the service, which would shock anyone after seeing this type of reaction following his friend's memorial. 5 days after Kim's murder, Cruz decided to confide in his gamer girlfriend from the small eastern Canadian town of Halifax, Nova Scotia. He felt like most chat forums were trackable, except on World of Warcraft. Cruz confessed to the girl about the gruesome acts and invited Cam into the chat to confirm his story. He also sent the girl the related news reports over instant messenger to prove what he had done. She told Cruz to never do anything like this again, and that she would always be there for him. On World of Warcraft, the girl asked Cam if he felt bad for Kim's family, friends, and all those whose lives he ruined, where he responded with, "No, I don't feel bad for them." Cruz continued to attend school on and off, but whenever Kim's name was brought up, he instantly became mad and would yell at others. When Kim's best friend Samantha asked him to stop talking about her, he screamed, "She's dead. Who gives a shit?" He also reportedly told classmates, "I'm glad she's dead," and "I hated her." Cam and Cruz would constantly talk about what they did to Kim on Instant Messenger, even stating, "Since we killed that bitch and it wasn't too hard, we should do it again." How crude could the two be? It's obvious they have all the markings of serial killers in the making. If only someone had noticed sooner. The teenagers were brought in for questioning, where they admitted to seeing Kim that morning, but stated she left them to go to school. When an officer asked Cruz who he thought could commit such an act, he stated, "Someone who thinks it's worth it to kill someone or someone who's in a fit of rage." Police eventually found enough evidence to move forward with investigating the teenagers' interactions online and getting to analyze their previous activities. Eventually, police dug up their online searches, plus old text and instant messaging transcripts. The Tech Crimes Unit collected over 1.4 billion sheets of information on the two. By the following year, in June 2011, both Cruz and Cam were arrested for Kim's murder. When Cam was arrested and interviewed for over 9 hours, he described the ordeal as the biggest adrenaline rush of his life. His body language showed that he felt anxious, tense, and afraid by his arms remaining crossed and his curved posture. He played with the police and purposely withheld information for his sick game of cat and mouse. At one point he says, "There's gonna be a time and place someday when this is just gonna be so easy to tell this." But eventually he gives up their secrets and confesses what they did to that poor girl. He also mentions that Cruz told him, "If I'm gonna incriminate myself in this, you have to too." The psychiatric reports on the teens deemed them clinically psychopaths and claimed there is no chance of reforming them. Psychopaths are characterized by features such as superficial charm, high intelligence, poor judgment, failure to learn from experiences, incapacity for love, lack of remorse or shame, impulsivity, pathological lying, and manipulative behavior. When the officers interviewed Cam, he seemed relaxed and at ease with the situation. The two teens were tried as adults and received lifetime imprisonment with zero possibility of parole for 10 years. Kim's family felt they received a certain degree of closure, but her father said,
These animals aren't rehabilitatable. They deserve to die a long, slow, horrific, painful death.
Throughout the trial, there were recorded conversations between Cruz and his mother, where he continued to refuse blame and implied his actions were due to his mother's inability to parent. The case may be closed, but the community has been reminded of the crime multiple times over the years. In 2014, Cam was moved from a maximum to a medium security prison. The family was outraged by the decision and expressed confusion about how this could happen to a murderer with extreme antisocial behavior. Their primary concern is that someone who has shown zero remorse appears to be moving through the system quickly, which may allow for release after minimum time is served. Corrections Canada rules define a medium security prison as suitable for inmates who present a low to moderate probability of escape and a moderate risk to the safety of the public in the event of an escape. This clearly does not describe Cam, a psychopath with zero remorse who seemed to enjoy taking the life and defiling the body of a young girl. In 2017, Cruz's father, Robert Raymond Deswan, attempted to escape from the Mission Institution. Thankfully, he was captured shortly after escaping. However, this is the same institution that holds his son. So we have to wonder if there are other motives or plans in place. Quite the toxic family, huh? Over the years since Cam and Cruz were put in jail, Cruz has tried to apply for part-time parole, which has caused Kim's family to relive the horrible events that took place back in 2010. In his most recent request for day parole, he blamed his crimes on his upbringing and exposure to his father's criminal behavior. "I get cranked up about it," her father said of attending the parole hearings for his daughter's killer. "In this country, it's the families of the victims that serve the life sentence." Cam has waived all possibilities of parole since he was sent to jail. In 2020, Kim's aunt planned to light a candle and reminisce about her niece on the anniversary of her death. As the world changed forever in 2020 in light of the global pandemic, Joanne Landot hoped others spared a thought for her niece, and many families like hers already coping with significant anniversaries of grief and loss. That same year, Cam and Cruz were eligible for full parole for the first time. The family has met with politicians and leaders in the hopes of setting up early warning systems that would see troubled kids receiving treatment before they harm others. Cruz applied for parole and was rightfully denied. The court still felt that he had not been rehabilitated and still posed a threat to society and harm to women if he were to be released. The family lobbied for Kimberly's Law, which eventually came into effect as the Self-Care Act in Canada. This act was created with the intent to prevent tragedies by intervening early and mandating counseling. After 9 years of fighting, the family was at a standstill with both levels of government when it came to achieving all the changes they wanted. However, they felt like the Self-Care Act was a step forward in preventing the horrific events that happened to Kim, happening to other young women. Young people who commit crimes are more likely to do so with their friends. This fact has been reported on since the 1920s and continues to gain interest as we see so many young offenders commit crimes they would not consider doing if they were alone. There is also debate over nature versus nurture. One might say that the warning signs were coming from both the teen's actions and the fact that Cruz's father went to jail for heinous acts regarding the death of a young girl. These facts make us wonder, would Cruz or Cam have committed the crime against Kim if they didn't have each other to bounce ideas off of? Does the use of graphic gaming platforms cause youth to fantasize more graphically? How does Cruz's father's criminal past affect his primal urges and reasoning? Let us know what you think about these questions in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe.